And good afternoon, one and all. This is Senior Pastor Raymond C. Dix Jr., and welcome to another edition of the President's Hour. I know we've had kind of a hiatus. The month of June was a very busy month for us, and I do want to apologize for not getting up a pre-recorded broadcast and things like that, but super busy. But now, even in the rest of the summer, we're going to try to make sure we keep going every Monday with a fresh and new edition of the President's Hour. So I'm excited to bring you this show today. We've got a great panel for you to be a part of this presentation. The topic is a really good topic today, but I hope everybody's doing well. Hunker in, share this with your friends, neighbors, call them up. Let them know the President's Hour is on. If they don't have Facebook, get them the YouTube link. They can watch it on YouTube on GMB SCI TV on YouTube. That's GMB SCI TV on YouTube. So they can be a part of this. I want to show you what that looks like. There it is right there on the screen. GMB SCI TV on YouTube. They can watch us there, and they also can watch our Facebook page. So the Facebook page is my personal page, Raymond Dix Jr., our church page, Pilgrim Baptist Church of Fort Wayne, Indiana, as well as our convention Facebook page, which is the General Missionary Baptist State Convention of Indiana Incorporated. And this is a presentation of the General Missionary Baptist State Convention of Indiana Incorporated and yours truly. So we have a great show planned for you today. So as I said, hunker down. If you're on your lunch hour, eat that sandwich and watch us. I want to make sure you are paying attention. I have some exciting guests today. So we want to make sure that you are being a part of that. So here's the topic for today. The topic is, what is the role of denominational conventions and associations in the 21st century? Let me give you some housekeeping tips as well. We will be able to see your live comments. And as always, the live comments are, we ask you to be respectful of other people in the comments as well as the guests. And we will pop your live comments and questions up on the screen for our panel. So for the next 55 minutes or so, we look forward to you being a part of this program. So make sure you comment. Let us know you're watching and where you're watching from, because this is being broadcast potentially all over the world. And so we believe that God is big and that he has provided this platform for us to work within building the kingdom of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, right here on earth. So we're excited about that. With that in mind, let me bring in our first guest, and he hails from the great state of Mississippi. That is right, the MISISSIPPI state of Mississippi. He is the president of the General Missionary Baptist State Convention of Mississippi Incorporated, and our acronyms are about the same from Indiana and Mississippi. And right. I don't know if you ever get people mistaking you as me, but every now and then I get a Buckley reference. So, but this is Reverend Dr. Reginald M. Buckley. Dr. Buckley, welcome to our program.
God bless you. Thank you so much, Dr. Dix, and thank you for the invitation to be able to share with you. And yes, those acronyms are quite similar. I say all the time, listen, I'm just glad we're both living right. How about that?
Amen. Amen. That's a good point. That's right. Yeah. We're so happy about that. Dr. Buckley, take a couple of moments and just kind of tell us the church you pastor and how long you've been there and some of the great things that are going on there in the state of Mississippi. And I'll just say this real quickly. Listen, it was so hot. I was in Jackson last week. It was so hot. People asked me, where were you? I said, I'm in South Hell. No, it was, but I love it. I love the heat. It was great. Tell us a little bit about what's going on in Jackson and your ministry.
Well, actually, just to piggyback on that, right now in Jackson, it's probably 80 degrees, believe it or not. So,
oh, my goodness.
So, yeah, we got the relief of the heat just in time for you all to leave. But right. Yeah, I'm glad. And I saw you from a distance. Didn't get a chance to greet you personally, but I got a chance to see you in the board meeting. And we thank God for for the friendship that is developing. Yeah. So here in Jackson, Mississippi, this is my home, born and raised here in Jackson, product of the public school system. Went on to Tougaloo College, where I got my Bachelor of Arts in English, and went from there to University of Illinois. So I spent some time in Illinois. In fact, my very first pastorate was in Danville, Illinois, where I stayed for about nine and a half years.
I-74, isn't it?
I'm sorry.
I-74, Danville.
Yeah,
I
that's
know
right. That's
Danville.
right. Yeah. So yeah, we were a total of about 15 years in the Midwest before returning to Mississippi. My wife and I both got our terminal degrees from the University of Illinois there in Champaign, and spent some time in Indiana, where my wife was part of the faculty at Purdue. Before we returned to Mississippi. So been back home now for this is our 15th year being back home. And thanks be to God, I'm actually pastoring the church that I grew up in, pastoring the church that my dad pastored for 45 years before retiring. And so we're thankful to be able to be a part of that great legacy and that great tradition.
Sure. Tell us the name of the church.
Cade Chapel, CADE, Cade Chapel Missionary Baptist Church. Organized in 1880, so over 140 years old.
Wow.
It's a historic church, but with progressive leanings. And so we're thankful that our history has not detracted from our destiny.
Well, I just want to let all the pastors that are in Jackson that are watching this or will watch this, when you feel around the 10 or 11 o'clock hour, like a little earthquake, that'll be Buckley preaching. Okay. Just so you know.
Bless you, man.
Well, thank you, Dr. Buckley. Let's bring in our next guest. And this guy is a bonus guest today. He just agreed to be on the program just a few minutes ago. And that is none other than the Reverend Dr. Franz Whitfield from the great Midwestern state of Iowa. He's the vice president at large of the Iowa Convention. Dr. Whitfield, tell us a little bit about what's going on in your neck of the woods and what church you pastor, maybe how long you've been there, and give us the name of the church and the convention.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you, Dr. Dix, my friend and state president. Thank you so much for having me on, and it's an honor to also be on with Dr. Buckley. So thank you so much. Again, my name is Franz Whitfield. I pastor the Mount Carmel Missionary Baptist Church in Waterloo, Iowa. I have been there this past May for 15 years. So my first church was called there at the age of 26 years old. So I'm so excited about what we have going on there and to be leading that church. Also, I serve as the vice president at large for our Iowa Missionary and Educational Baptist State Convention and affiliated churches of Illinois and Nebraska. We've got a long name.
Yeah, I was going to mess that name up. I was going to mess it up. I know it right now.
So this is actually my first full year serving as vice president at large. We just elected a new state president, which so happens to have the same last name as myself, Dr. Jonathan Whitfield, who serves as the pastor of Corinthian Baptist Church in Des Moines. So just so glad to be on with you today, Mr. President.
Great. Appreciate you, man, very much. And I know you're doing great work there in the state of Iowa, along with Dr. Jonathan Whitfield. I happened to get a chance to see him in Jackson on last week at our Congress of Christian Education for National Baptist Convention USA. And I'm just grateful for you, man. You're a young guy. You're still at your first church, and that says a lot about the integrity of your ministry and how people have taken to your ministry there in Waterloo. So I want to bring in our next and final panelist, and he is a great man of God, somebody who I've learned to respect here over the short time that we've known each other. And it's none other than Pastor Dwayne Hawkins, who is the president of the state of Nebraska, the state convention there. Dr. Hawkins, I'm going to let you tell us a little bit about yourself, your ministry, what church you pastor, and the name of the convention and all of that. So welcome to the program.
welcome. Thank you, Pastor Dix, to uh, Whitfield and blessings to all of you. What a great privilege it is to be on this great panel. I apologize for the lighting. I'm at a coffee house here, and I'll see what I can do to maybe move in a second so I can get a better visual. Again,
I,
so
I
my
heard
name is Juan.
I heard the music and I thought it said, "Is he coming straight from the glory of heaven?" I didn't know.
No, man, this is the glory of scooters. This is the
Listen, nothing like a
glory
good cup of coffee, man. I'm telling you.
of scooters
Good. Tell us
coffee.
about your church, man. What's the name of your church?
So I live in Omaha, Nebraska, born and raised, and the church I pastor there is the Antioch Baptist Church. I have been pastor there for this year. I'm celebrating my 10-year anniversary, and
Praise
so I
man.
was the interim before that, and before that I was the associate minister for 6 years prior to that. So about 17 years total, 10 of those as pastor, and currently lead the New Era Baptist State Convention of Nebraska Incorporated. I've got one more year left. I've been in that position for 2 terms, and for 7 years, I've got one more year left, and also serve our national work as our West Region Vice President for our national campus.
That's
Grateful,
awesome.
grateful to be on.
Grateful. Thank you. Thank you so much. We're grateful to have you for sure on our program today. Gentlemen, let's dig right in to this topic today. Basically, our topic is, what is the role of denominational conventions and associations in the 21st century? I think that most of us have had long enough term in ministry that we've come to be a part of and witness and partake in our local associations, maybe state conventions, national convention. I'm going to start with you, Dr. Buckley. Going forward, what do you see as the role, especially as a new president of a state convention? What do you see as the role of the state convention, national convention, and the local districts in the 21st century?
Yeah. Well, thank you for that question. I think a large part of the work of the state convention historically, when we think about it, has evolved around fellowship. Fellowship has certainly been a great part of what we think about convention associations, what we gather from that. But beyond the fellowship, at least the convention that I'm privileged to offer leadership to, uh, our convention has a history really of leaning forward into institution building, leaning forward into policy formation. And so as president, I'm really interested in us reclaiming a large part of that tradition. In terms of our convention, specifically, we founded Natchez Seminary in 1877, which went on to become Jackson State University. In 1884, we founded Natchez College. We currently own and operate Mississippi Baptist Seminary and Bible College. So that sort of institutional presence and institutional building is something that I believe conventions are uniquely positioned to do in state work. And part of my administration is to sort of lean into that tradition, also to lean into the tradition of speaking prophetically to issues that are right in front of us. That we don't shy away from those things, but rather that we give a critical voice at a critical time to speak truth to power. So those are kind of the things and I believe that conventions are uniquely positioned to do that because together our voice is amplified. Together, we can do things together that any single church just has a harder time and more difficult time doing.
Great, fantastic. Let's go to you, Dr. Whitfield, Franz Whitfield. As a young pastor, and I think you're probably younger than the three of us. And if Spoon was here, Witherspoon was here, he would say something like, I was older than Methuselah. But anyway, uh, as a young pastor, 15 years into ministry, as you look at the role of the state convention, the national convention, and even the district association, what do you see going forward into the 21st century?
Well, thank you, Dr. Dix. I think what is so unique with my experience is the fact that I actually grew up in my state convention. So to grow up, starting in the youth department and the junior layman of our convention, and now serving as vice president at large, I think from when I started attending the state convention at the age of 9 or 10 years ago, I'm 40 years old today, but attending back then, there has been a major shift in how our state convention looks. As growing up in the state convention, as Dr. Buckley just alluded to, it was about the fellowship. We look forward to coming together every year to be in our state convention. But now, in 2022, our state convention looks totally different from 20, 25 years ago. And now, when people are looking for that fellowship, they're looking for much more from their state convention. And so I think that we have to have that difficult conversation on how that looks, and how we're able to actually meet the needs of the people of our convention, to make sure that they're getting something out of it rather than just putting into it.
That's an interesting perspective, and we're going to touch on that a little later, Dr. Whitfield, because I want to come back and certainly hear what you have to say about many of the younger pastors that have expressed that very concern. And we'll get back to that a little later in the program. Dr. Hawkins, tell us from your perspective as the longest tenured state president on this program, what do you feel is this role going forward as we hit the third decade of the 21st century?
Thank you, Dr. Dix. I just really want to echo the sentiments of Pastor Buckley and Pastor Whitfield. Pastor Buckley, you present a very unique perspective in the institutional work that springs from uh, our collective efforts, and you've really given me something to really think about. But when I look at the landscape of convention work, particularly during this time of transition, COVID, preparing for post-COVID, are we still in COVID? I think that one of, I believe, the most critical issues is that of revisiting mission and adding value. Um, what I see going forward, um, at least in Nebraska, there was a significant decrease in activity of our state convention, particularly when it came to us coming together in person. Even though the majority of our churches, all of our churches, are, with the exception of one, in the city limits. And so we can see one another. The furthest church is 45 minutes down the road. And even still, there was a lack of physical presence during that dormant time, 21 and 20 in particular. Uh, and so it became even more critical to make sure that the work of the convention is adding value to the local church and making sure that our mission to encourage and equip the local church is still our guiding post. How we do it, I've discovered, has to transition simply because how the local church is fulfilling its mission, the Great Commission and Great Commandment, in many ways is changing. And so that means if the work of the convention is to encourage and equip local churches to accomplish that mission, that means that the convention itself has to change the way it encourages and equips local churches. And it's all about creating value. Our national dean really spoke prophetically at our Congress last week and talked about um, local churches thriving and flourishing, and the work of convention work flourishing. And I believe that vision, but it'll only happen to the extent that we know the needs and we're able to meet the needs and as such we establish the value that we add through our convention work. So I think it's revisiting our mission, and I think it is all about adding value to what local churches are doing and what they need.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Hawkins. Gentlemen, we're going to take a quick break. I got a couple of videos to run. And after that, we're going to get back and we're going to start digging a little deeper into this value added institution building, whether or not the local church is benefiting from the perspective of some of the pastors. This is actually a two-part program. We're going to have local pastors on, hopefully on next week, to really discuss what their perspective is as we see the leadership kind of discussing perspective today. So hang in there, folks, and we'll be right back with more of the President's Hour. Listen to these couple of videos, and you'll see us shortly. And welcome back, everybody, to the President's Hour. This is your host, Pastor Raymond C. Dix Jr., with our distinguished panel, Dr. Reginald Buckley, Dr. Dwayne Hawkins, and Dr. Franz Whitfield, here sharing with you about a very important topic that we think is going to be transformative as it relates to understanding what the role of the conventions and state conventions and national convention, as well as the local district associations, what that role is going forward in the 21st century. Gentlemen, I want to just kind of, first of all, I want to thank Dr. Hawkins for, coming out of darkness and into the marvelous light. I appreciate him. He's such a handsome fellow, Dr. Buckley, that you got to make sure that we see him, So, but we appreciate that very much. But I want to share a little bit of my perspective as a new state president. I think I am like you, Dr. Hawkins. I'm really intrigued by the work that Mississippi has done in Dr. Buckley's convention and in the tenure of previous presidents, going all the way back to establishing and building institutions. I think that if there's one thing that we have to really look at is institution building. You never hear people talk about the civil rights institution. We always talk about a movement. We always talk about a movement, and movements require dynamic personalities, and oftentimes don't live far beyond people. But institutions last, and institutions live beyond people. And when I think about the University of Notre Dame, for example, here in South Bend, Indiana, Notre Dame is a relatively small Division I university, but they have a multi-millions, hundreds of millions, maybe even $1 billion television contract with NBC. So all of their home football games are broadcast on nationally. That is institution building from the secular corporate perspective. This will last beyond people. People donate so that this institution remains. And so one of my challenges is to really help us build Indiana in that same way. And Christian education and aid and help and resource for the local church and the district. I think a state convention ought to be a resource base rather than existing for the sake of just existing. We ought to exist to be a resource to our local churches and our state convention. So that's kind of my thoughts. But I want to get to you today and talk about, here is a big question as it relates to your work, in the state convention as leaders. How do you, as a denominational leader, balance that work with the work of pastoring a local church? You gentlemen are pastors in your own right. So, Dr. Buckley, what do you see as the nuances of balancing those two things together?
Wow, great question. Let me start by answering that question by saying I thank God for great teams around us, around me. It could not be done without some great teams, both on the church side and on the convention side, because we have people who are in place who understand this season that we're in. Who I had some conversations with our leadership here at the church before announcing my candidacy for president, and we were able to have some honest and transparent dialogue about what that would mean in terms of service, in terms of needing to put some things in place so that I could serve effectively in both spaces. So thank God that our deacons really have rallied around that and really have given me some latitude to serve in both capacities. Were it not for that, we would be having a different kind of experience. And so, it's because of great teams that we've been able to balance both.
Great, fantastic. Dr. Whitfield, young pastor, grown up in the convention. From the time you were a wee lad, and you were a part of the convention. Now, as a pastor of 15 years, how do you balance the work that you're doing statewide for the convention and the work in your local church?
Well, I was very privileged when I first came to my church because my church was already a convention church. We were active in our state convention, and our church took a bus to the National Baptist Convention every year. So when I first got there, I was real privileged to have a convention church, and they knew my involvement in the state convention as well as the National Baptist Convention. So besides the fact of me serving as vice president at large for our state convention, I also serve as our co-chairman for our Young Pastors Division of our National Baptist Convention, our Spirit of Timothy. And so I have a real understanding church. and they understand my responsibility to the state convention and to our national work. But one of the things that I've tried to do is that even though they are understanding, I like to make them feel important and try to get them to understand that, the church comes first, and then the state convention and national work comes next. And that's why I'm grateful for our current state president, Dr. Jonathan Whitfield, because he has made an effort in telling us that look, your church comes first. Take care of those responsibilities, and then the convention comes next. So I'm just grateful to just have an understanding church.
That's awesome. Dr. Hawkins. Well, let me just say this first. Dr. Whitfield is in the the co-chair of the Spirit of Timothy, and he said young pastors. So I think I'm excluded from that, but I'm gonna fill out my application and see what happens. But, nonetheless, Dr. Hawkins, you've been a president of a convention now for at least 7 years. Is that right? And now you're coming into the last part of that term. How has that impacted, or how have you balanced the work in the state convention with the work as a local pastor there at your church? Not to mention the 100 other things that you're doing.
Great question, Pastor Dix. I do acknowledge Dr. Buckley's comments about the role of the team makes a big difference. And I do acknowledge the comments of Dr. Whitfield about support and understanding from the local church. But I'll also say that I acknowledge that there are times when I am out of balance. And sometimes it is inevitable. And so I'm not going to say that I balance it, because I know from experience that there are certain times of the year that is the busy season for the national work, for the state convention work, and it kind of took me a minute to understand the ebbs and flows and the cycles. But knowing that I'm going to be out of balance helps me to plan to be out of balance.
That makes sense.
And to know how to prepare for that, how to survive during the out of balance time, and how to recover when you come out of an out of balance time. So knowing the ebbs and flows, I think, is critical, and acknowledging that there are times where you're not you're not in balance, and just being willing to settle with that reality. And once you settle with that reality, then you can at least try. You can try to plan, and then you can know where the finish line is.
That's
And I
great.
think that's been helpful.
Man, these are all great responses to that. I think the out of balance thing is really what resonates with me as a new convention president. Learning the ropes on. I didn't have the advantage of kind of coming up as a general secretary, second vice, first vice, vice at large. It was like, okay, you're pastoring a church, and then boom, you're and I prayed. I said to the Lord after I got elected, and Buckley, maybe you and Hawkins can agree with this. Okay, God, you told me to do this, but are you mad at me? I need to know. But I will mirror what Dr. Buckley said. I have a fantastic executive team, and we wouldn't be able to do some of the things that we do if it wasn't for them and the work that they're doing. And also, I have a understanding congregation. I pastor a 103-year-old congregation here in the city of Fort Wayne that has been kind of a mother church, not so much a big convention church, at least not in the last a couple of decades or so, but kind of a mother church in our community, and understanding the role of leadership that is necessary to work in the kingdom. I kind of see the convention work as very similar to, in a sense, of what you do in a local church, because we're working in the kingdom, and the ideal of building the kingdom of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. But enough about me. Let's dig into the nuts and bolts of this, gentlemen, because we all maybe have seen and heard criticisms. And if you have a question or a concern or something like that, please put it in the comments. We'll try to get it up so that we can hear your question, and maybe try to answer your concern for this for our topic today about state and national and local associations and conventions. But here's the thing that we've maybe all heard, that the state convention, the district association, the national convention does not meet the needs of the local congregation. We've heard it from local church leaders. We've heard it from local pastors. I was just telling somebody yesterday that when you look at the local pastorate, people think of pastors and they think of mega churches and things like that. And, less than 5% of churches in the Black community qualify as mega. Less than 5%, maybe even less than that. So there are many concerns that pastors have regarding contributions, sharing resources with the district association and the state. Dr. Buckley, what do you say to that pastor who has 75 members, 50 members, 100 members of their church, and say to them, we need you to support our state convention? And he says to you, Dr. Buckley, what is it? What's in it for my church? What do you say to him?
Yeah. So listen, you're right. We've heard that critique, and I think first we have to own the message of that critique. We have to own that comes from churches who are genuinely interested, not just in critiquing the convention, but also playing a part in the convention's work, and seeing and knowing that there is a value proposition behind being a part of this convention, and you get something out of it. It may not always be the material thing or that, but there are some tangible things that we as a convention should be able to point to and provide to all of our members. I think we have to give a compelling value proposition and saying, here are the things that matter to us as a convention. Here are the things that you participate in as a member of the convention. Number one, our conventions serious about being missionary in their work. We know that they're missionary in our titles, but can we point to actual mission projects? Can we point to actual mission work that says, here's where your dollars are being effective? These are the things that we've done with your dollars, and because you've contributed to this convention, we've been able to rehab X number of houses. We've been able to give in-home missions. We've been able to make sure that disaster relief has taken place, and here's the evidence of it. And it's not just this oratorical list, but we have a product that says at the end of this year, and we put it in the hands of all of our convention members and saying, this is what we've been able to affect. This is what we've been able to do. I think when the conventions really get back to some of the nuts and bolts of what it means to do denominational work, and part of that is saying that we're going to be good stewards of what we bring into the coffers of the convention. We're going to not only ask for it, but we're going to be accountable to our membership churches. We're going to show you where those dollars went to work. And then when you need assistance from us, we're not going to turn our backs on you. It's not going to be just about give, but we're going to make sure that there are some opportunities for the convention to actually be good faith partners with our local congregations. One thing, and I'll say this, and I'll let the others comment. one thing I think that conventions have to have a real conversation about internally is sort of that registration structure. We all have different registration fees and levels that we ask churches to register at. We may need to take a look at that and see, is there a more equitable way that we can make sure that members that have 75 members, churches that have 75 members, 25 members, whatever it is, that they can be fully participating congregations at a level that makes sense for them.
Yes.
We have to have that critical
Yeah.
direct conversation.
Man, that's dynamic, and I want to come back and circle back around to that here in a minute. But let me go to Dr. Whitfield, Franz Whitfield. Franz, what do you say to as a young man? I'm sure you might hear more complaints from some of us. The spirit of Timothy was likely birthed out of the fact that there needed to be more opportunities for younger pastors. And frankly, let me go on record as saying that I don't think that's far enough, that we haven't gone far enough with our younger pastors. One of the things when I was a much younger pastor beginning, that I didn't feel like I could say anything, quite frankly, in the district or the state, or certainly not the national, but I certainly showed up with my check, so I mean there were questions. So what are you hearing, and what do you say to that young pastor that says, hey man, I know we got the spirit of Timothy, and I know on the state level we've got this, but how does this help my church?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. In my own personal experience, even though I'm a young pastor, still consider myself a young pastor.
You got about 2 more weeks for that, by the way, but go ahead.
I know, right? I'm kind of old school. When I first attended, the National Baptist Convention, I went at a time when, Dr. Caesar Clark was still living, Dr. Evie Hill, and so I had just started preaching, around that time, around 13 years old. And so, I idolized, those legends, in our convention. So I'm just old school at heart. But now that I'm officially in the role of pastor, and again, I've grown up in our state convention, I am seeing, that there is a huge disconnect between the current climate of young pastors now and our state convention. One of the things that I'm grateful for is our former president of our convention, Dr. Damian Epps, who's over our state convention. I'm grateful to him because he gave me a chance as a young pastor in our state convention. When he became president, he made me his general secretary, and I was able to do a whole lot of work behind the scenes and kind of run the day-to-day operation, take that load off of him. And so he had pretty much set up a process to where, those he put in place of work to just be elevated. And we were just talking about it last night when we were together. Who could imagine, when you think about the Mississippi, convention, or New Era convention. I mean, who could imagine that, somebody at 40 years old, could be vice president at large of the state convention, when you've got
Right.
guys, in the South or in Illinois or Indiana, who've been in the convention for 50, 60 years, and they're not even chaplain for the state convention.
Yeah.
But what I'm hearing from young pastors, is the fact that they really don't want to attend our conventions anymore, because they feel like the older generation, the older pastors, aren't really connecting with them. They feel like when they go to the national, we're hearing the same guys preach over and over and over again. They feel like they're not getting the opportunity. And so I'm a firm believer, and especially in this climate of the pandemic that we have been in, I think one of the things that's important to say is that for so long, our conventions have been about people coming to us and not us going to them. Um, 2 weeks ago, we just did our state congress here in Iowa, and we did a completely virtual session. We didn't do in person, and we actually had a larger attendance virtually than we've ever had in the history of being in person in our state congress. So you have to meet the needs. You got to come out of your comfort zone, and it's going to take some change, which is a hard thing for us
Yeah,
to deal with.
and and Dr. Whitfield, and please forgive me for saying this, but I think the idea behind virtual brings its own set of challenges. Alluding to what Dr. Buckley said at the beginning of the program about the benefits of fellowship. We don't really get those benefits in the same way as we do virtually. So that's something else that we're struggling with. I think that's a whole nother program that we can do. But I want to go to Dr. Hawkins, and when you hear over the last 6 or 7 years of your tenure as a state president, when you hear these questions, and we've got a really good question in the chat room or in the comments that I'm going to get to here after you finish, Dr. Hawkins. But so hang on, viewer. I want you to hear the answers. At least my answer, because you're in my state. So I want to. But Dr. Hawkins, tell us, what do you say when the pastor comes to you and says, "Hey, it doesn't seem like I'm getting my bang for the buck from the state convention." What's your answer as a state president?
Great question. When I came into state presidency, I sensed that great tension. Does the convention exist for the church, or does the church exist for the convention? And coming into the presidency, it seemed to me that there was enough evidence to support whatever conclusion that you wanted uh, to ascribe to. Um, so how I dealt with that is really circling back to my initial comments, and the first one is about mission. Is about the mission of the convention. And one of the things that I was blessed to be able to establish in Nebraska is that the convention exists to benefit the church.
Mhm.
And communicating that message throughout the convention and being able to communicate what that looks like back to the convention has been significant. One of the early conversations that I had with my convention staff was the fact that the work of the convention should not compete with the work of the local church.
Mhm.
We shouldn't be doing the same things, making one super church by picking this person out of this church and this person out of this church and doing the same thing that the local church has been charged to do. And
Right.
so I think mission is foundational to answering that question.
Yes.
And the other thing that I think is significant is earning the right to hear what the needs are. And
Mm.
that really has been a product of developing personal relationships with
Right.
pastors in the position of president.
That's right.
Uh, that is the off stage work of the presidency.
Yes, sir.
To gain, to develop rapport, to develop trust, to develop camaraderie, such that you can really hear what the real need is, so that you know how to create value.
Yes.
So critical.
Yes.
And then the third thing that I'll say is, in my opinion, Dr. Buckley alluded to this. In my opinion, the the function of the state convention would be better served functioning more as a nonprofit organization than a convention in its structure. And what I mean by that is that nonprofit organizations understand who their primary customer is. Uh, and at the state level, is the primary customer the member at the church or the church itself? Again,
Correct.
that goes back to mission, but from a nonprofit perspective, nonprofits who function well, they understand who their primary customer is, and there's no confusion.
Right.
There may be secondary customers, but knowing who the primary customer is, knowing everything you can know about the primary customer, and the other thing that successful nonprofits do well, that I think conventions would do well to emulate, is the transparency and the communication of mission activity and value driven activity. And,
Yes.
and so one of
Yes.
the things that we've tried to do at our annual session is, instead of having an annual session program, it really is more of an annual report. Um,
Mm.
so that we can tell our story both inside of the convention, and we have something that we can tell our story outside of the convention.
Yes.
Here's where we are, here's what we've done, here are our finances, here are our leaders, and it becomes more of a communication tool of who we are and what we've done than what we're going to be doing throughout that week.
You
So,
know, Dr. Hawkins, if I could just interrupt you for a second,
go
man,
ahead.
that's powerful. That is powerful. And I just got to ask you real quickly in about 30 seconds because our time's getting short. But tell me, did that require a change of culture when you came into the presidency? Were they already looking at it that way, or did you have to kind of institute a cultural change within your convention?
We had to institute a cultural change, and it's not fully embraced the way that I would like it to, because what comes natural is following the national model,
That's right.
and to make that shift has been slow, uh, and it takes time, and it takes helping leaders to think in a different way, and there's a lot to go into making
Yeah.
that. We've made some strides. We're not where we used to be, but we still have a ways to go.
And I think Dr. Buckley, you probably could also agree with this, and maybe to you, Dr. Whitfield, coming in as a new president. The thing that I found that we need to do, and I kind of ran on this platform, was a cultural change, a cultural shift in our convention to become a resource based convention. You know, to function as a resource for the districts, not to compete with the districts. For example, Congress of Christian Education. You know, I think education is best served closest to the people. You know, and if you can help districts focus their on their congresses of Christian education and the local church education, it gives the state convention an opportunity to do some novel things in terms of ongoing Christian education, maybe even some institution building. We're looking at partnerships with our state convention with universities. We're not in a place to establish a university right now, but we certainly are in a place to partner with universities to say, we have people that want to go to Bible college. We have people that want to go to a Christian college, even get a liberal arts degree. So we're looking at those kind of things. Let me get to this question, though. One of the viewers has asked a very important question, a pastor, and here's his question. Real important. What about small churches paying $400 a year with getting nothing from the convention? Three question marks. Okay, so Dr. Bacon, that's a very we get it. We get it. That's a very serious question. Let me answer from my perspective. And I think Dr. Buckley, you alluded to this, looking at the financial structure, adding in what Dr. Hawkins has said and what Dr. Whitfield has brought in about being intentional with some of our leadership. Dr. Hawkins talked about value and exposing value. From my perspective, this is an area that I'm determined to see refocused, refurbished, reconstituted, however you want to put it. We're going to make some real changes in Indiana as it relates to that. And two things come out of your question, Dr. Bacon. The idea of the pay, and then the idea of value. I don't get from your question that you really have a huge concern with the pay. It seems that more of the concern is with no value. For example, if they charge $70,000 for a home, or 80,000, or 150,000, whatever, I need to know that that home has value. If I'm going to pay it, I'll pay it if it has value in my eyes. So there are some things that are, when we look at this, may be more valuable to me than it would be to Dr. Hawkins, Dr. Buckley, or Dr. Whitfield. And so I think what we want to do is help our pastors see that whatever your level of investment is in the state convention, that you can see real value. And so I wanted to get to that question, and I hope I answered it. And if you have further questions, Dr. Bacon, you know how to get in touch with me. We can talk about that. Gentlemen, our time is about up. And I want to be respectful of your time that you've given to us. Let's do a wrap up. Everybody take about a minute, and things that you want to kind of say on this topic regarding what you'd like to do and to see happen in your state convention to make it more relevant, more connected to the local church, district association, and even the national. Let's start with you, Dr. Buckley. 1 minute wrap up.
Thank you so much again. Thank you for the platform to be able to meet these brothers who share in this ministry. One thing I think that state conventions, national convention as well, that we can do a better job at, that I think would move the needle forward, would be, our systematic implementation of missional work. When churches can plug in and know that missional work is replicated across the state or across the nation, and we all have certain programs that we know, here are the results, here's the mission, here are the objectives, and here are the measurable outcomes. I think we will begin to see a cultural shift, as Pastor Hawkins talks about, in terms of the level of support that we can get from our local churches, but also we'll be able to answer and saying, here's where your dollars are going. And let me lastly say this, those dollars, that $400, while we always want to know what we're getting, we should always recognize that part of that is just a part of being a part of, right? That there's a membership part, that as a member of Alpha Phi Alpha, there's a membership that I pay, right? That
A5, bro.
A5, right? I don't get anything back from that. I'm a member, right? And so I want to be clear, as a president, everything can't be necessarily couched in what is the return based on what we give. Some of it surely can be, but some of it we need to make sure it is recognized as part of just being a member is the obligation that comes with that.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Buckley, and appreciate you, man. Dr. Whitfield, 1 minute wrap up, man. What do you have to say to us?
Real quickly, I just have two things. In terms of what are we getting out of the convention by paying $400 registration, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. But my response to that is that if you have concerns about what you're not getting out of what you're putting in, you have to be present. You have to be there to make your voice heard. And that's something that I personally did in the last couple of elections, when Dr. Jerry Young first ran for president. I was on one of the opposing sides, and I made my concerns known to Dr. Jerry Young personally. And some people said, man, you're crazy for, talking to the president like that. I never disrespectful, but just voicing your concerns and all this and that. And one of the things that I love about Dr. Young is that he appreciated what I said to him. And when he became president, he asked me to be a part of his administration because I voiced concerns to him about having a voice for our young pastors in our convention. And so, surprisingly, even though I was on the opposing side, he asked me to serve as one of the chairpersons for the Young Pastors Division. So, if you have issues with what you're not getting out, you have to make your voice heard as much as possible. Be there, be present, and make your voice heard. And then just quickly, the last thing that I would say, we talked about the convention and what we're not getting out of it. We are far gone from the days where our churches are bringing tons of money to the convention and we're able to survive off of what they bring to our convention in terms of registration and whatnot. We have to now, in this certain season, be a convention or state conventions that are business minded, that are business oriented. So that means that you've got to partner with corporations, within the city or within the state that are willing to sponsor and bring money to the convention so that we don't have to survive or panic if we don't get money from our churches. So we just have to change our thinking and our mindset, and we'll be good. So thank you, Dr. Dix, for having me today.
Thank you, Dr. Whitfield. Dr. Hawkins, 1 minute wrap up, man. Tell us where we go from here. What are your thoughts? Go right ahead.
Thank you, Pastor Dix. Just quickly, just want to paint a vision of what successful denominational work could look like, particularly at the state level. From where I see it, the picture that I want to paint is that local churches will be stronger, and they will be able to clearly identify the ways in which their local churches have strengthened as a result of associating with the local work. And when that happens, the local churches get the shine, and the convention really becomes more invisible. And we are underneath the local church, upholding the local church. And when we see evidence of that, we'll know that our conventions are headed in the right direction.
Man, thank you so much. And I want to say to each one of you gentlemen, how much I appreciate you taking your time, and a couple of you guys came on at the last minute. I know that I could twist Buckley's arm. That's my frat brother, so he had to do that on the shield, bro. But no, he didn't. I didn't have to twist his arm at all. Just
on a Monday.
Yeah, right, on a Monday. That's the other thing. But I knew I wouldn't be able to get any pastors Tuesdays and Fridays, so that Monday was my only shot at doing this show. We're going to actually re-air this during this week, so feel free to share it with your congregations, share it with your state conventions and local associations. If you have any questions, you can always send us a message. Comments and all those things. We try to look at those during the week. But I want to thank you guys again for taking your time to be a part of this. This is an ongoing discussion. We're going to have more to say about this. The partnership ideal. One of the things we're doing in Indiana is as Dr. Whitfield said, we're partnering. We're looking. Imagine the buying power that all of our churches have with something like office supplies. Imagine what that would mean to supporting a minority Black-owned business. In terms of every church in the state bought their office supplies there. I mean, imagine what kind of discounts. Imagine the ideals of providing scholarships that were sponsored by these companies and corporations to our young people, more than the general $1,000 or $2,000. Be able to give a $10,000 scholarship to a child to go to a HBCU or something like that. So those are all things we're going to continue to talk about and look forward to. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. We've got exit now. There's a video that we need to play, but I appreciate y'all very much for your time. And folks, thank you, viewers, for watching and commenting the way you have. So I try to get as many comments up as I can, but we thank you for doing that. And guys, have a great week and preach that word. I know Buckley is only 80 degrees there, so you say,
but now it's going up. Believe me,
it was 180 last week.
Yeah.
But guys, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you. Love you, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bless you, brothers.
All right. Stay tuned. Next week on the President's Hour, we'll have more. We appreciate you. Look forward to seeing you soon, everybody. God bless. Hey, this is Pastor Raymond C. Dix Jr. thanking you for watching another edition of the President's Hour. Tune in next week for more of the same relevant talk and important information that we're going to share right here on GMB SCI TV. Look forward to engaging you on next week. May the Lord bless you and may the Lord keep you is our prayer.